Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and good day, everyone. As people join today's webinar, we invite you to make sure that your chat window is open. In these sessions, typically a lot happens during the chat. And Dean, yes. Give your hand up.
Oh my.
No worries. Welcome everyone to the 5th installment of the EdTech Hub, AI and Education Observatory, World Bank community of interest around the use of artificial intelligence in education, the AI EDCOI. Today's session will be focused on exploring AI and assessment. What do we mean by assessment? What do we mean by AI? How do we separate the hope from the hype? These are questions we're going to be exploring with all of you and with 3 great speakers, panelists who are joining us from around the world. There is a note in the chat that if you'd like to see subtitles in a different language on your screen, please select Show Captions at the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred language. You may or may not have done this in Zoom before. Zoom may look different from the last time that you did it. Today's session is being recorded, so be on your best behavior. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Say who you are, who you work with, and where you're coming from today, and that would be great. With that said, I think we have a quorum. We have about 65 people in the room, and we'd like to kick things off today. We'd like to first have a note of welcome from Daniel Plout from the EdTech Hub's AI Observatory. Over to you, Daniel.
Thanks so much, Mike, and hi, everyone. Welcome on. I'm speaking in place of Verna, our executive director at EdTech Hub today, who unfortunately had a last-minute clash and wasn't able to make it with us. But I'm Daniel Plout. I'm the Innovation Learning Lead at EdTech Hub, and I'm really glad to be welcoming all of you to this community of interest session that we co-host with the World Bank, focus on AI for assessment and evaluation. And this is an initiative supported by the FCDO. And so we're so glad to have you all here joining us in this conversation. I think one thing to just open us up, one thing I love about this community of interest is that it really gives us a chance to look a little bit more closely at some of the more consequential questions that we have on AI and education at the moment. And I think assessment is one of those. I know that there's, frequently when we talk about AI and education, we're often talking about personalized learning and ways for generative AI specifically to personalize the learning experience for learners. But actually, to me, one of the biggest interesting potential impacts of AI is the ability for us to know more about the learning that is happening itself, and to potentially enable educators to then do that bit of assessment-informed instruction and have that feedback loop from really informed information about their learners and what they're gaining to then cater instruction to them. So this is something that we've been thinking about a good bit in the AI Observatory and Action Lab. We have, as you hear, a ministry initiative that focuses on supporting ministries of education enhance their service delivery. Assessment has come up big as one of the big things that folks are interested in working on. We know that ministries are really interested in ways of streamlining learning assessments, ways of automating a learning assessment, ways of making them more accurate, more able to really create that feedback loop for teachers and policymakers. And really excited to hear from 3 speakers today who are working in this area. We also know that there's some risks to this. We know that there's potential for this technology to have bias, to be inaccurate. We know that the development of these tools, many of them based on data from the global north, could potentially inform how these assessments happen in a way that's not positive. And we also know that there's potential risk of putting a lot of accountability towards this technology without humans in the loop. And so we want to discuss all of that. We want to discuss the potential as well as the risk, and are so happy to have you all here to do that with us. I'll pass it back over to you, Mike.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And we note that there is an issue with the chat function right now. We are working on that. We hopefully you will see it explode in front of you with a whole bunch of introductions, and we apologize that it appears to be disabled for many of you right now. While we get that working, I'd like to introduce you to, well, our topic today, AI and assessments. Assessments, what are we talking about when we're talking about assessments? Are we talking about formative assessments, summative assessments, system diagnostics? What do we even mean by those terms? For those of you who are specialists in the area, these terms are second nature. For others of you, they may be new terms, and we'll do our best to explain and back up, explain some of the terms used during the course of today. Summative is, well, let's start before that. Let's talk about formative assessment. Think about if you're making some soup and you dip your spoon in and you taste it while you're making the soup. That's a formative assessment. Summative is after you put the soup on the table and people eat it and tell you if you did a good job or not, or maybe give you a grade. And maybe a diagnostic assessment would help you understand what all is available to you in the kitchen and indeed what people are hungry for. So those are three of many terms that we'll be talking about today. Who will be talking about those today? We have a great group of panelists. Ask them to introduce themselves in turn, but they're coming to us from all around the world. First, we have Nawaz Aslam. He's the country lead at the EdTech Hub, coming to us from Islamabad, Pakistan. Nawaz, are you here with us today?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Mike. It's a great introduction to the topic as well. I just want to say my name is Nawaz. I'm the country lead for EdTech Hub in Pakistan. Am I audible? I think. I'm the country lead for EdTech Hub from in Pakistan, and I've been working in EdTech for the past 7-8 years, trying to work around a solution that would work in the low resource settings that we have over here, considering the infrastructural context and also the teacher capacity, etc. So I started getting engaged with EdTech before the Gen AI boom, before the ChatGPT boom came in, and it was when Google's DeepMind was beating the world champion Lee Sedol at Go, and that's so basically the whole pre-generative AI applications have started from there, and now looking at how Gen AI is being used around the world, especially in education, especially in low resource contexts. Thank you, Mike.
Great, thanks so much. That was great to have you with us today. Coming to us, it looks like he's coming to us from near Earth orbit, but he's actually coming to us from Nigeria, I believe. Mr. Anthony Ude, who is a senior technical advisor with RTI. Anthony, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me. My name is Anthony Ude. I'm an EdTech specialist and instructional design expert, especially around foundational learning and use of technology for education. I've been in the development space for about 15 years, especially around education, seeing how technology in low-risk contexts can help drive scalability and also improve learning outcomes. Drive around AI has really been a very interesting thing, from looking at the post-COVID and during COVID experiences and seeing how AI can help improve educational outcomes immediately after COVID, and how countries, can leverage, especially low middle income countries, can leverage AI to improve learning outcomes in facing the challenges of low resource and budget. So it's nice to be here, and I look forward to share a lot of use case experience while working at RTI, and also use case experience in developing, the next generation of AI that could help education in this resource context. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome, Anthony. And also, so coming to us, I believe, from Delhi in India today is Diego Luna Baswaldua from the World Bank. Diego is a senior education specialist who's done a lot of work in this area. Diego, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Mike. Nice to see you, and nice to see the other panelists joining us today. My name is Diego Luna Basaldua. I am a senior education specialist now based here in the South Asia region, but formerly in the global unit doing work on learning assessment. And I think that this is going to be a very interesting conversation on the use of AI and assessment. I think that as a psychometrician by training and somebody who has been on the forefront of leading dialogue on learning assessment, whether we talk about classroom assessment activities, high-stakes examinations, or large-scale assessments, there is a lot of momentum and interest right now in seeing how we can leverage assessment with the use of AI, but we also have to be careful about how much really AI can help and what are the limitations on the use of technology for these different uses of assessment activities. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you, Diego. And nice to see so many familiar names and new names as well in the chat. The chat is now open, and please do introduce yourself. We see colleagues from all around the world, from Estonia, from Nigeria, from Ethiopia, from India, from the United States, from the UK, all over the place. And please do, from Tunisia, please do introduce yourself on the chat. And I'd like to please also welcome you to pose questions, make comments in the chat. For those of us who've joined us before, the chat function often can be quite lively with questions, with answers, with debate, with disagreement, and we welcome that as well. Just a reminder that we are recording today's session. I'd like to start off with, there's so much hype around the use of artificial intelligence. It's in education and for assessment. There's long been sort of the holy grail of the use of EdTech has been in a more personalized learning experience, and that assessment is bundled up with that inextricably. What does that mean? How should we unpack and understand what the possibilities are, what the potential is, what the risks are? That's what we want to focus on today. And we thought we'd start by talking about actual examples of how we see AI being used for assessment activities of various sorts, especially focused in its use in low resource and multilingual environments around the world. Now, as if I might have you kick off, what are some examples of, and maybe what you are working on and what you've seen of the use of AI in assessment activities, especially in these sorts of contexts?
So currently, one thing that we evaluated at the start of this year was AI-generated lesson plans that were being used in public schools in Islamabad. And one thing that those teachers, so we did surveys and focus group discussions, and we evaluated the quality of the lesson plans and their implementability in these settings. And one feedback that we got again and again from the teachers was they were really happy with the formative questions in those lesson plans. So what we found out was the quality of the lesson plans that the teachers were generating themselves weren't as good as the lesson plans given by AI. And staying on topic on assessments, again, one thing that we saw was a great improvement in formative assessments. So the teachers were really happy with these were tightly scripted lesson plans, and after every instructional point, there would be some check-in point, something for the teachers to ask and then get feedback from the students. And the teachers found that the assessment questions, the formative questions, were designed in a way that they were engaging more students. What they found was students who used to be silent in the classroom were engaging more, were participating more. And so that is one application recently that we saw of AI being used to generate assessments, although not directly, but it is formative assessments. And they were helping the teachers in the classroom. And we saw some improvement in the assessment aspect of those lesson plans. Very recently, we're in the middle of developing an AI assessment tool for reading for foundational literacy and numeracy. And the issues that we're coming up with is the local dialects that the students have here. And so being able to develop a model that can understand or process these changes or different dialects would be very useful for that assessment. So there are a few. The point that I'm trying to lead to is infrastructural constraints. So anything that you want to implement, especially when it comes to assessments, because those are taken very seriously. And the data coming from those assessments, especially if they're summative or high stakes assessments, there cannot be any room for doubt. There cannot be any room for, to stay on the AI topic, hallucinations. So keeping humans in the loop, ensuring that all of the work is being reviewed by the humans is a necessity at this time. And we are thinking, maybe considering going with an agentic flow in which the AI can review it, and then any outstanding items can then be reviewed by the humans. Currently, the limitations are around infrastructure for assessments, definitely, and we'll be discussing scaling up. It's very important that the environments for implementation are uniform across in the whole region. So wherever you want to implement any assessment tool using AI, the environments for those tools have to be homogeneous. They have to be consistent throughout. So to ensure that the results are then processed in the same way, centrally, where they're supposed to be processed for these summative assessments.
Thank you so much, Nawaz, and thank you all of you who are asking questions, including specific questions to Nawaz in the chat. We may get to some of those specifically, and Nawaz, you're invited to check in. There's specific questions about actual names of tools and those sorts of things. But maybe while you're doing that, if we could turn to Anthony. Anthony, what are you seeing of examples of AI use in assessment in your work and in places where you are working?
Thanks, Mike. I think some of the research that Nawaz was also hinting on, we did also provide some support, and some of the things we're finding out is AI use in assessment. It's also being directed not just to conduct the assessment, but also to provide kind of teaching at the right level, assessment informed instructions, generating personalized learning goals for students, and also supporting teachers on the decision that they need to make. I give an example of the computer-based reading assessment that was carried out just after COVID 2022 in the Philippines, where the government needed a solution that would prep students for the national exams that would happen, and they wanted a solution that would provide an assessment platform for teachers to assess students in grades 3 to 4 on basic literacy such as oral reading fluency, silent listening comprehension, and other comprehension activities. And one of the things we found out was that it's very important to build with teachers in the loop, ensure that the results that the AI provided is available for teachers to review and rescore or point out areas where the AI might not be scoring correctly. And then teachers found this to be very useful because it gave them some level of agency and they were carried along in the process. One key thing that came out from that pilot, which is that teachers were very happy that the process that would normally take them about a term to regrade assessments, it's taking them about just a couple of hours to do that for a whole school or a whole class. And then one other key aspect that I'm beginning to see is the issue of language and cultural context. In that particular pilot, the AI struggled a lot with the Filipino languages, and there were a lot of reasons. For example, lack of available data to train the AI model on Filipino language and different intonation. And this, for example, I see as a major issue with using AI for assessment. And I think the opportunity that also comes with that is the ability to build more modular language models that allow for quick training and quick deployment for that specific context. But there's also a lot of opportunities in this area with easy deployment. The particular pilot was very quick to deploy. It was easy to work with the teachers to get the right user interface that enabled them conduct something close to about a self-administered assessment. So that was a great opportunity. Over.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Over to you, Diego. What are some examples you see of AI use in assessment, especially in low resource contexts?
Thank you, Mike. I'll start from a different angle, Mike. Less on the side of a practitioner or somebody leading an intervention on assessment, but more on the big picture of how we have to think about assessment and the types of assessment activities that we have to be careful about. We in the bank, for more than 10 years, we have been using a typology of assessment activities that distinguishes between classroom assessment activities, large-scale assessment activities, and high-stakes examinations. And each one of these has design considerations, planning considerations, and implementation considerations, and use of result considerations that we have to be careful about. As AI in assessment, in these different types of assessments and uses of assessments can be very useful, can accelerate the development of items, the development and deployment of tests, the scoring of tests, the production of results. It can also be represent a saving on cost, for instance, compared to how long does it take to a human to produce an item or produce a test vis-a-vis a machine or an algorithm. And this is not new in the field of assessment. I know there is a lot of hype on AI in the last 5 years, less than that. But if you look at the research led, particularly in the US and Europe, on AI and assessment, it has been there for a long time. It started with the automatic development of items more than a decade ago in the US in ETS. It followed with the automatic scoring of essays or automatic scoring of oral responses, for instance, for TOEFL tests in the US. And from there, I think what has been a boom in AI has been the scale up of language LLM systems. Those systems allow us nowadays for any single person anywhere that can pretty much use a ChatGPT or any chat app to produce items or to score some kind of input, right? When it comes to classroom assessments or formative assessments, I think that the kind of examples that have been provided so far, I think those are very clear areas where it's a quick win to use AI. It's a no-brainer to rely on AI for implementing assessments. When it comes to high-stakes decisions on students or the use of assessments for high-stakes decisions on students or for cross-country comparability for an international assessment or defining trends for the same country over time is where things get a little bit more challenging. I think that for the classroom assessments or this teach at the right level approaches where assessment is used on a far more formative manner by a teacher, we have definitely a lot of promising areas of work. For summative assessments, for high-stakes examinations, for international assessments, I think that we can rely on AI for generating items, but we should be careful about going from there to think that AI by itself is going to be the solution, because there are so many other things that by design we have to be careful about. We have to be careful about the aspects related to the comparability of results. We have to be careful about ensuring that we're giving the right result to a student. We have to be careful about ensuring that we have comparable items between, say, countries that take an AI-based assessment or a computer-based assessment or a paper-based assessment, because not all countries are there yet when it comes to AI use. So just those are some of the main points that I have on this area. I think I will, as we continue this discussion today, I'll bring up some of the facts that are coming from the psychometric literature about the uses and limitations of AI in assessment. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Diego. Thank you so much, Diego. If we can drill down maybe a little bit to Naz, if you could maybe, Diego mentioned a number of things that we need to do or should be done. If you could maybe walk us through perhaps the development of the tool and the use of the tool in Pakistan, some of the considerations that were front of mind in the development and usage of the tool and in the evaluation of the usage of the tool as well. What was important? What was most important? What wasn't? What did you find as you rolled out the tool? We had a great set of questions from Aftab in the Q&A function as well. Looking for some specific insights from specific experiences, if you have any to share.
Well, I think Diego broke it down really well. So the whole assessment process also involves the designing of the assessment items, their development, their review, and then turning it into a question paper. Aftab has mentioned that in the comments as well. So the place at which we picked up the development of the tool is the assessments have already been designed. They have been designed close to the EGRA standards. I'm talking about foundational literacy and numeracy. And so now that they've already been designed, now we're looking at how we can use AI to evaluate the students. The foundational learning assessments are very intensive. One person can only evaluate one student, their reading and numeracy, and it takes about an hour for one student. And there needs to be a lot of analysis being done by the evaluator. So we want to offload some of that work onto the AI. Now, a few questions that we're facing right now is whether this would be student facing or evaluator facing. So basically, will the student be answering the questions on the tool, or will the evaluator have this tool to record the answers and then do the analysis? And then stuff like in reading, stuff like words per minute comes up or correct pronunciations. And so those need to be tracked, and it's difficult for humans to do it. And so the AI can be leveraged there. right now, very interestingly, we're going through the constraints that we have. For example, one constraint that we have is this foundational learning assessment is done on the same day throughout the country. So one constraint that we're facing right now is being able to provide the students with all of those devices. We can't have that many devices, so that limits how we will be able to use this tool, which leads to the point that I mentioned earlier. It was apologies for the noise. It was you need to see what infrastructure is available before you can scale up anything. So if you don't consider the infrastructure, if you don't consider a homogeneous implementation of any tool, I find that it is doomed to then fail for the purpose that it was designed for. And so right now, in terms of the administration of the test, this is where we're looking at assistance from AI. AI can help us analyze the results and help us and make that process quicker. And one very interesting thing that I would like to mention here is because these assessments, the evaluations are subjective. Each student, each evaluator might give a different score to a response. You and I might hear a response, and you might be more strict in your evaluation, and you might give fewer marks than I would. And so the first thing that we did here, while as we're looking at tools that can process language or evaluate these results, we're seeing the first thing we're calculating is alignment with human evaluators. And that led us down a very interesting path in which first we did an evaluation, a comparison between two human evaluators. So 4 human evaluators, and we saw they were aligned around 80% of the time. And the AI tool that we're using, we saw that it aligned with human evaluators around 85% of the time, different evaluators. So there is this matter of subjectivity when you're using AI for evaluation. If it's longer response questions like essays, etc., you can assume that some subjectivity goes into it. And so how those models are trained, how their comparisons are done, that evaluation between, and how those benchmarks are set for those models to evaluate is very interesting and is something that we're doing right now.
Thank you, Nawaz. I'll move over to Anthony, and feel free to comment on any of the things that Nawaz broke up. But in your experience, in this issue or this challenge of designing the right tool for the right audience, for the right objective, what are some challenges that you especially see in designing and using tools in the classroom or at scale?
I think I would just start from some of the points that the challenges that Nawaz is currently facing. In the case of the pilot we did in the Philippines, we were already used to the EGRA style of assessment and the various challenges that it brings with resources. And that was one of the key things that was on our mind on how do we reduce cost, how do we design with the teachers. And one of the things, for example, we did was to make sure that the interface was kind of like a hybrid between a self-administered assessment and a teacher-supported assessment, meaning the design consideration should allow for students within the grade 3, 4, and 5 that they should be able to operate it. It should be as simple as a one-touch use. Another thing we also considered was ensuring that the duration of the assessment should not be longer than 7 minutes. So we designed the task to flow directly in the natural order of which the EGRA, for example, is being done, from initial reading to silent reading to listening comprehension and the rest. And we made sure that students were able to complete these assessments, for example, within 7 to 5 minutes. We were getting 4 to 6 minutes of a self-administered workflow. A key part for some of the challenges around devices, for example, and this might be different from different use cases and contexts. In the case of the Philippines, they were just coming out from COVID, and there was a lot of access to mobile devices. Students were already used to taking COVID classes, from their phone while school were on closed down. So it was a bit easy to build around the reality of that environment, where teachers or parents could just go online and then they could carry out the assessment, for example, for their peers. Also very key to the point he raised around being able to allow for regrading. The design we implemented allowed for teachers, like I said, to see the exact audio recordings in real time and be able to see the words that were miscue words or error words and categorize these words. And then the teachers could be able to say, okay, no, I think the student said this correctly, and AI, you didn't get this right, and then the teacher would correct. But what that gave to the teachers was, a way to really interact with what the students are doing and be able to know exactly which areas they need to improve. Another key aspect around design that we implemented was accessibility. How can the design consideration for AI use in assessment can make sure that all the bottlenecks that teachers may face or students may face in interfacing with this system are reduced. For example, the system integration was open source, and it was linked to learning management system, which was like a major thing in the Philippines and still is at this time. And it means that people could access it from anywhere once they have an internet connection, either through their phone or through their laptop. One other key consideration we looked in that came in very interesting was getting the feedback from the students during the pilot. For example, some of the students were saying like the normal content that was uploaded, for example, passages and the stories in the passages were not so engaging, though these passages were coming from the national field area standard, which is like the national standard that the Filipino government uses for conducting assessment. But the student also felt like if there were more contemporary content in the literacy passages or the words, they would feel more engaged and they would probably be able to comprehend or understand it more. Another challenge I see, especially around resources, was scheduling the assessment in a way that it allows for device management. In the case of the Philippines, they normally conduct this assessment, the beginning of the term and the end of the term, and yet it's a national timeline. But being able to structure this in a way that is a region or a school can start, then we could learn from that challenges and then use the learnings to conduct the next region or school was very key.
Thank you, Anthony. I think maybe Anthony is experiencing
so
technical.
if we're designing to think about solutions that anybody can access, a parent or a teacher. An example, can you hear me?
We can hear you now again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, there are current examples. I recall us presenting some of these findings in CIS conference and other conferences like the M Education Alliance using in assessment. There's been an exam that exact kind of interface and design consideration has been, integrated into their own workflow, which is very nice, and we're seeing a lot of people learn around this. They've also gone further to make it accessible to any teacher on their mobile phone, and the teachers can just conduct the assessment for students in their class. Although there has been some challenges around group administered learning assessment. How can we use AI to conduct a group administered learning assessment whereby we don't have to wait for one child to complete because of device limitation and then hand over to another child? So I think this is also an opportunity to see if models will be able to, do group administered learning assessment and be able to decipher which student was reading what, and then be able to come up with a profile of how that child is reading. But these challenges are real, and I believe there are interesting ways also that we can leverage these challenges and make it a bit more useful in low resource context.
Over. Indeed. Thank you very much, Anthony. And apologies some if we had a brief technical glitch there. Thank you also, Diego, for sharing a whole set of resources in the chat, background, both some pretty technical stuff for pretty technical audiences and some more general resources as well. And also for Carmen for giving us an update on what's happening with with Tangerine. It's great to see. Please do feel free to continue to make a good use of the chat to put in questions, answers, and share resources. A few of the resources from the EdTech Hub's work in AI and assessment have been appearing there as well. Diego, what are your reactions to what you've heard from our two colleagues today, especially when you're thinking about the use of or the design of tools that try to take advantage of AI at scale? What's some reactions that you have to what you just heard from our colleagues here today?
The first one is a design consideration. Going back to your question, Mike, I think that by design, one of the challenges that I see from people who are doing more implementation work is to rely on AI for assessment, just focusing on drafting prompts and creating items out of prompts, right? When you are planning an assessment, you have to start with a framework. And I think something that Noah was mentioning about was using the EGRA framework, which is actually quite good. I really like the EGRA framework because it's quite complete and it follows the progression of foundational reading skills very clearly. But in many cases, I see people who are in the field doing more work that doing more like a naive approach to assessment, in which rather than using a framework, they go for just having a prompt and asking a question out of a prompt. So the very first step that I would start with is design considerations. And for that, I would say the very first step before even doing an assessment or thinking about using AI is having a blueprint and having an assessment framework in place. That is true for the classroom assessment. And in classroom assessment, pretty much your framework is what is taught in the classroom and what the teacher has to follow from the curriculum on a day-to-day basis. And when it comes to high-stakes examinations, it's probably the curriculum of what is going to be part of the exam. When it comes to national or international assessments, probably you're looking at competencies, right? I think here in India, for instance, they have a new reform on assessment on the national assessment program that is heavily focused on competencies. And the same goes to TIMSS, PIRSS, and PISA. So having the framework in place is the very first step, in my opinion. If you have a good framework that explains very well what you're trying to measure, then and only then you can move to thinking about how to use AI to create item banks and other using AI to exploit the capabilities of what usually you could do only with humans. So that would be the very first step. What are some of the design and limitations that I see based on the literature and what I see with practitioners more on the field of psychometrics rather than interventions focused on foundational learning? What the literature says is that ChatGPT and other platforms are excellent if you want to focus on rote memorization items or in basic comprehension items. So this works very well with an EGRA or an EGMA type of assessment, where you only have to identify letters, words, probably read a sentence and use AI to identify the oral fluency of the sentence or very direct information that you can get from a simple paragraph. However, that is not the only thing that a government is doing. A government that carries out assessment activities seriously will have to strive to not only focus on foundational learning, although that should be central to the government agenda. They will also carry out national assessments that will be trying to measure higher order thinking skills. They may probably be interested in using AI for examinations that require a more detailed and more careful design of assessments and exams. In those cases, I think that if you are only relying on AI for producing assessments, you are going to fail because those assessments heavily focus on memorization or heavily focus on direct information that is on a text. This is well proven in the literature and in some of the documents that I share with you. They showcase by psychometricians, by curriculum experts, that when they realize and try to categorize where these items created by ChatGPT and other platforms are, they tend to be on rote memorization, and that's something you have to be careful about. The other challenge that is very well reported in the psychometric literature, Mike, when it comes to the use of AI in assessment and the design considerations is how are you going to be using the assessment for? If you're going to do a high-stakes decision on a student or you're going to do an impact evaluation, you need to use assessments that are very high in item discrimination and very high on reliability. And what we're finding in the psychometric literature is that these assessments that are fully generated by AI tend to be more on the lower reliability, lower discrimination side of the items. I'm not going to get into the details of the psychometrics of that, but just to say that you don't want that if you are going to make a high-stakes decision, or you are going to say something about the impact of a program or some kind of intervention that you carried out. Then and only then you have to modify the approach. And I think I want to recover something that Anthony said about relying on humans to have some kind of quality control from anything that is created from AI in assessment. And not only for that, but also ensuring that the humans can catch things that the AI cannot catch. Some of the examples that I was recovering on the literature show really good cases where AI produced items that had multiple correct answers, or items that had no correct answer at all. And if you only are expecting AI to run the system without any malfunction, that's not going to work. So having humans in the process is very important. And I think the other part that is very important here is, as I said, if you're going to go for foundational learning assessments, EGRAS or ECMAS, like those that are implemented in Pakistan or the Philippines, it's very important that these assessments are also aligned to what teachers are actually teaching in the classroom, right? It's not only a matter of carrying out assessments or reducing the time and cost of carrying out an assessment by using AI. If this is not aligned to what teachers are doing in the classroom, this is useless at all, right? You probably are saving time, but you're not really saving that much time, because probably a teacher that is relying on these tools for improving their classroom practice will spend even more time trying to fix this misalignment than finding some type of benefit out of the use of AI in their classroom. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Diego. That was a wealth of very practical recommendations and insights drawing from the research literature. Thank you very much for that. And Nawaz, what strikes you from what Diego said? Are there other mistakes or misconceptions? And then conversely, what would be an appropriate course of action based also on practice, on what you've been seeing and what you've been working on in Pakistan?
Yes, I wanted to address the high stakes summative assessments. So very interesting case study, although it will not be written anywhere. It's 2 years ago, one of the examination boards over here, and we were on their steering committee. They really wanted to leverage AI to evaluate the student responses. And so, but you already have a system in which the students are doing the tests or exams on a sheet of paper. And so the input that you're getting from the students is just student responses on paper. And the next step then obviously would be to somehow digitize those. Obviously, if you're using someone who's reading those and inputting, you're doing like manual data entry, that goes against the purpose, and it's going to be very counterintuitive. But so what they tried to do was they try to use OCR, optical character recognition, and try to read what the students had written. And their plan was, so the point that I'm trying to get to is there needs to be a way to transition from what you're already doing to what you want to do leveraging AI. So obviously we couldn't have students, tens of thousands of students, or even hundreds of thousands of students doing those assessments on computer devices, because this is a low resource setting. So the next thing that they had was, if they can digitize those responses, they can use AI to evaluate them, and then the evaluation can then be more consistent across examiners, across evaluators, across the regions. So it was sort of like a leveling, trying to level the playing field. But this was 2 years ago. The technology was quite nascent. The LLMs weren't to that mark. It was going to be very expensive. The cost per token had to be considered, and for each of those, it was going to be massively expensive for each examination cycle. And then there was an idea about developing our own model, but that requires great computing powers and AI data centers. So there's some costs associated with using AI to evaluate assessments. And all of this discussion is in the context of LMICs or low resource settings. And so that was a great project. I felt like they were just ahead of their time. So if they'd started that right now in this time, because things are progressing so quickly, advancing so quickly, if they'd started at this time, they might have found a more cheaper way to go about it. but the idea was in the end dropped because the character recognition, student handwriting was really bad. The character recognition that AI was doing was not reliable. And in the end, the conclusion was that you would have needed to, in order to be like, make sure that the integrity or fidelity of the assessment remains true, you needed to have a human also evaluating all of the responses. So that part was dropped. The main point that I'm trying to make here is whenever you're introducing AI, whether it is in assessments or any other place, the transition to AI has to be considered. It has to be, you can leverage AI once the things are in the digital domain. But one issue that we face here in Pakistan and mostly around the LMICs is you have analog, you have assessment, or you have responses on paper. Moving to the digital side is still a bit difficult. It is very not ubiquitous, but it is very common but not ubiquitous. So basically it's not uniform across, and then you will have more inequity, or you will be like doing more inequality is going to be an issue there. So uh, going back, just make sure, like, we need to make sure the transition from our current systems, from the legacy systems, to anything that we're doing with AI has to be smooth, has to be equitable, and you have to ensure like everybody can get can benefit from it.
Thank you very much, Nawaz. Anthony, are there other? I do appreciate a number, and I'm getting a number of side messages from people here asking about, okay, this is all well and good, but what does this stuff cost, and how can we even figure out what it costs? That's perhaps a topic for another community of interest session for sure, and a number of questions about doing this in non-international languages or doing this in multilingual formats. Again, another topic for another community of interest session. I think that would be of great interest to all of us. But Anthony, what can you speak to some other mistakes that you see people are making or misconceptions that are governing or informing the approach to the use of AI in assessment that you've noticed in your work?
Yeah, I think before I go to the mistake, I would like to respond to some of the comment made by Nawaz and also Diego around validity of item banks. I think from the lessons we've learned, it's very, very important that you are drawing your item banks from a validated source that would give you the right quality of the outcomes you're expecting. For example, most Ministry of Educations or government would have like confirmed item banks and tags that are related to the curriculum, related to what the teacher is doing in the classroom at that point in time. It's very important to make sure that whatever language models or AI systems you're developing is pulling from these particular verified sources. Another point also is the ability to restrict the AI from just going out wild and just generating content, but rather sticking to content, that is curated, that is verified and confirmed to give the desired result, be it a feedback, be it an item bank, or be it an analysis. An example, for example, Carmen did mention something around the Build Gen AI that RTI is working on. And we took a lot of lessons from the various pilots we've done with AI in assessment and the things we've done with teacher support and tangerine work. And we were able to come up with a model that allows for easy swapping. So for example, you could swap a particular model with another model. For example, language translation, languages that are like indigenous languages. And you could also lock in other solutions, like, for example, we have Loquat, which does teacher talk time, where you could actually, the teacher talk time in the classroom can be listened to, and that could lead to judging if what the teacher is doing is related to, what the students are supposed to learn, and then provide feedback to the teachers. But around quality issues, it's very important that data annotation in the process of training the AI model is verified. There's concurrent validity in the process of annotating the data that is used to train the model. There's also the need for frequent concurrent validity between the result and output that the AI is churning out as a result of feedback to the teachers from the evaluations. Around mistakes, I think the major mistakes that we see here is language bias. You see a lot of automatic speech recognition, NLP models that can really provide good feedback for English assessment. But when you now go to for African languages or Asian languages or other languages, then you start seeing a lot of error rates and a lot of misgrading happening. In the case of the Philippines, we did include Tagalog, which is the major language, and English. But we also noticed something very unique. The system somehow was performing well in some couple of words in Tagalog, and we're not performing well in words in English, which is also unique to context. This is very important. And one of the things we found out was that the students were using intonation when they are speaking in English, and it was confusing the AI system. But when they were speaking in Tagalog and they were doing the assessment for Tagalog, the AI was having a better performance. And this is something that, people that are designing systems would need to consider. Another issue is the data gap. One of the most underrated mistake is assuming that, we could just design an AI model and then put a couple of recordings and then we have a system to use. No, the data collection process is one of the highest and, let's say, the most cost. It has the highest cost in collecting good, accurate data, which has to be wide. It has to be national if you're thinking of a country. It has to also include a lot of inclusivity. You have to get data from a wide range of student type, wide range of environments. For example, we discovered during the pilot that conducting the pilot in the classroom where we have about 5 students or 20 students spaced out was a bit different from conducting the reading assessment in an African setting where we have about 500 students in the class. And the AI performance was largely affected by the background noise, though we were using technology that would do noise cancellation and the rest, but we still saw the difference in performance. And the ability to develop systems that would consider noise and be able to screen out noise in the process is very, very key. The human oversight also is a big mistake that a lot of people remove because it's AI. Then you assume that, AI is supposed to do everything and automate it. No, you have to make sure that there are qualified, trained people that would constantly review the outcomes of the AI, or building in a system within the AI that allows for retraining of the model by input data from the teachers. For example, the use case in the Philippines had 3 regrading standard where teachers can either regrade the AI and then give the AI feedback on words that the AI did not get correctly. Then the model would relearn from this feedback and use it for the next time. So the next time any student is reading that passage, the model would know that, okay, this is how the kids in this class, for example, or the kids in this place are pronouncing these words. Technology also is also very key. Many people assume that, okay, once you just put an AI model, you put an application, then anybody would be able to operate it. No. Digital literacy is a very key decider. In the case of the Philippines, it was a bit easy because they were coming from COVID and everybody was used to mobile devices. But when we did something similar in Tanzania, where we developed, we looked for accessibility and low cost, and we were running an AI model on SMS and IVR, where teachers can call in and dial a number, and teachers would be able to get feedback on any teacher professional development or pedagogy information they wanted. And the AI will interact with them like an agent and then provide them feedback and personalized feedback for that matter over time. We discovered that, for example, it was a big challenge with cost. And when you look at the overall cost of staying on an IVR call for a long time, it starts becoming very expensive and not affordable. And then we were thinking about, okay, why don't we do WhatsApp API, where teachers can always go back and interact with data? So these are some of the considerations that I think implementers would have to consider when they are developing AI. Don't get very carried away with the flashiness. You need to make sure there's human in the loop. You need to think about scalability and cost. You need to think about different ways you deploy AI. Do you want to go all self-administered? Do you want to have a human in the loop? For example, in Nigeria, there's a lot of use of AI for proctoring, and AI technologies that support large-scale, high-stake assessments are using AI majorly to ensure that the right student is taking the assessment. The cameras are seeing environments and making sure that there's no cheating. That alone, for example, increases the authenticity of the results of the assessment. If AI, for example, is just playing the role of a proctor. So these are some of the things we need to consider when we think about AI for assessment and mistakes that people need to avoid. Over.
Thank you so much, Anthony. AI for proctoring, AI for surveillance of the assessment process, a whole another area of inquiry that is absolutely fascinating. We recognize that this has been a very information dense session today, lots of specific pointers to research, to lessons from experience. If you may have seen me furiously jotting down notes, I'd like to remind people that after every one of these sessions, we will be sending to all the participants a readout of the event. We'll send a link to the full recording as well, and there will be a follow-on podcast which will go into greater depth on a few of these topics. So look for all of those in your inbox coming shortly after the conclusion of this event. Diego, if you could leave us with some final thoughts, just very briefly from your perspective, what is a takeaway from you from today's discussion? And maybe what is a question that you have that you're exploring in your work related to AI use and assessment that you think others might benefit from hearing?
Thank you, Mike. I think a takeaway, first of all, I think Anthony was very thorough on the mistakes and misconceptions.
Very thorough.
So thank you, Anthony. That was a very good review of all the challenges there, right? I think that my takeaway is that AI by itself does not make the assessment better. AI helps, but it's not the solution itself, right? I think that we need humans in the process. And if you recall the early days of the Duolingo app, I think I like Duolingo because it's an app that does assessment, that does adaptive learning in a very seamless manner. You don't feel like you're being assessed, but you are being assessed all the time, and that is how it progresses. I think in the early days, Duolingo had a lot of this user feedback coming, right? Whenever there was a glitch or something that was incorrectly scored or incorrectly produced by the algorithms they were using on AI, you could automatically give feedback to the programmers and they could address this issue. I don't see that in a lot of the people who are doing this in low and middle income countries. I see that in Khan Academy, in Duolingo, in this like private sector led activities, but not in these practitioner interventions at small scale in low and middle income countries. I think we have to be careful about that and how we use AI. And also, I would encourage all the people who are using AI to consult with psychometricians for design considerations, particularly if they are going to make high stakes decisions on students or teachers. What do you?
Thank you, Diego. Thank you very much. Now, do you have a final question that you could perhaps would like to share with people that is animating some of your work in this area, and a brief, just maybe a 1 or 2 sentence takeaway from today's discussion?
Sure. One thing I just want to reinforce is I think the challenges around AI in education are inextricably linked to the challenges around EdTech in education. So wherever EdTech, there's easy implementation of EdTech, you can assume, again, just like assume by doing actual evaluation, but logically it makes sense that AI solutions would be more applicable there. Wherever EdTech is an issue, wherever digital literacy is an issue, wherever these infrastructural constraints exist, the same would be then carried forward to the implementation of AI. So any design that incorporates AI needs to consider the final infrastructural realities in these low resource settings, because as Diego just mentioned, Duolingo has something that usually is not available in mainstream education in low resource settings, which is one-on-one time with the user, with the learner. So over here, it is limited. The classrooms are really large. The students don't have devices. So these are limitations we face when we speak about EdTech or using EdTech in mainstream education. And so the same, I think, I see the same issues or the same challenges carrying forward into the use of AI. So just finally, to wrap up, it's just we need to be cognizant of the challenges for EdTech and then be aware that those very challenges we'll face when we deploy AI for education.
Thank you very much, Noah. Thank you, Diego. Thank you, Anthony. And thank you to the organizers. Thank you to all of you who've stayed with us, almost 90 people through the today's webinar. We welcome opportunities for collaboration, further sharing of answers, of resources, and also of questions that you have in the community. You're free to reach out either directly or in response to Dean Klein at the World Bank, or in response to the follow-up emails that we'll be sending you with a review of major points from today's discussion. This will also include a link to the recording, and look for a follow-on podcast as well. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to the EdTech Hub, the team at the EdTech Hub, for facilitating this, and for the larger work of the AI Observatory that the EdTech Hub sponsors. You can reach out to Dean, you can reach out to Daniel. We look forward to seeing you all online. And with that said, I'd like to wrap up today's session. We look forward to seeing you in a month or so with another community of interest discussion. We have had a number of requests for topics, great ones. Thank you, Andrew. With that said, we wish you a great day. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to all of today's speakers. That was a really rich session. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.